Why
Yeah.
is it overrated? You know what I mean?
You're going to pay anyone as one way or another.
One out of 100. Accent is some kind of fundamental
All right, guys, welcome to It's More Than Just Money, where we delve into conversations with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers who are making a difference in the South African business landscape and abroad. Now, today, I need you to take out your pen and paper because I'm joined by a powerhouse in the financial services sector, a woman who's not only shaping the future of property finance, but also championing transformation in leadership and home ownership. Her name is Miss Nondumiso Ncapai. I hope I said that properly.
Ncapai.
Ncapai.
It's okay.
Yeah.
For today.
So she's the managing executive of Absa Home Loans with over 24 years of experience spanning digital innovation, IT, and strategic leadership in banking. She's led major shifts in how banks approach home financing, and she's passionate about giving South Africans access to meaningful long-term property solutions. And before we start, I need to remind you that this conversation is brought to you by AdProp. If you don't know what AdProp is, please head out to adprop.co.za, where you learn how you can list your property that you want to sell. If you're looking for a property to buy, you can also find a property to buy on the platform. And if you're a property investor who's got a property investment portfolio, you can use the same platform to manage your tenants and your property investment portfolio. Thank you so much for making time for us. I know how busy you are, so I don't take this very lightly. We set up this conversation in Jan, and now we are in May. Only now we're having the conversation because of how busy you are.
No, thank you. No, I was actually thinking January.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was sometime in Feb, March. But I'm glad to be here, glad to have the conversation and looking forward to engaging deeply.
So tell us about your journey. I mean, a lot of people, when they see people like you, they always look more on the glory.
Yeah.
But they hardly ever pause to understand what the story is.
Yeah.
So what shaped you before the boardroom? I mean, now we see you in power suits, we see you in the boardroom, we're sitting in the
Power
boardroom.
suits.
But what's the journey
Yeah.
like?
You know, Witness, you are so right, Uguti. A lot of us look at success at the top. I often talk about the iceberg, you know. But there's actually a lot that lies underneath. You know, humble beginnings, challenges, mistakes I've made in my life's journey. But also there's been incredible blessings along the way, both personally, but also for my career. And I count myself very blessed. But just to give you a quick view, I mean, I grew up from a township, Emalahleni.
Yeah.
I wonder if you even know.
I know.
Where?
In Witbank.
Okay, Witbank. N4. When you take the N4, so Witbank,
Yes.
absolutely. I grew up there, and I must say it was humble beginnings. I grew up at a very interesting time in the history of our country. I guess now I'm thinking about my years and feeling a bit old, but it's been incredible to have experienced that part of history and seen the progression from there. And coming from humble beginnings, I mean, I talk about a particular period in life where we didn't have what many would call a brick and mortar house or whatever we call it. And we lived in a shack for that particular point in time. And it was largely based on my parents and the decision they took to really focus on investing on our education at a very difficult time. And there's a lot that I went through to deeply appreciate what I have, first of all, today, but also the experiences that I've had that have taught me a lot about responsibility, being the eldest of 5.
Are you a firstborn?
Yes.
Wow. The responsibility is
The
a lot.
responsibility,
Yeah.
showing up and being accountable and setting an example for others that may follow. And that was deeply rooted in my upbringing. But also the the focus around family, and we'll talk about it later, I guess, around leadership, and how I look at leadership. So having gone through that part of my life, and having had to learn English at some point in my life.
There's a point in time you didn't know English?
Yes. I actually had to learn the very first sentence in English that I learned, and I remember my mother writing this on a piece of paper. And she wrote, "May I please go to the toilet?" She said, "That's the most important sentence to remember." So that I could.
Is that
at
when you're
least-
studying grade 1?
No. It was much later in life. I think they call it grades. Let me think. It was called Standard 2 back then. I know you don't know.
Standard 2 is grade 4.
Back then, absolutely.
Yes.
And
Sub A, Sub B,
Sub A,
Standard
Sub
1,
B,
Standard 2.
Standard 2.
Yes,
And,
that's grade 4.
And that's when I started. And yeah, I mean, I had to learn, grapple with the language then, and I had to transition from the schooling that I was in back in the days in the townships to the school that we were in. And I'm deeply grateful for a lot that my parents put in to make that possible. And then I finished matric in Witbank, and then I took up a BCom, Information Systems, graduated at WITS. So I've been in Joburg ever since, a WITSy, proudly a WITSy, and got a lot of exposure and learning from people from different backgrounds. And to where I am now, I must say there's a lot that I take away from that part of my life as well, having been at WITS. But as I say, let me go back. I mean, my background is technology, and you must be wondering, from technology to
finance. I was about to ask.
Finance.
Yeah, that
In
when you
fact-
joined ABSA, did you even imagine you'd end up in home
Exactly.
loans? Yes.
No, I didn't. I in fact, at the time when I'd finished my degree, there
You
was
studied
this
information technology.
information systems
Information
and
systems.
marketing through a BCom. At that time, there was a big topic around Y2K. I know you don't know.
What
You-
is
you-
Y2K?
You're too young.
What year was
When we
this?
thought year 2000 is coming, systems
And those
are
of you
going
who
to
are
crash.
watching, you might think she's 31.
I wish. that was many years ago. I really wish. But it was a big topic around then because we were transitioning from 1999 into the year 2000. Will systems work? What's going to happen? Maybe there'll be a crash,
The
etc.
dot-com boom. Is that what
No.
Y2K
It was
is?
slightly different. But it actually attracted a lot of attention, at least for those youngsters that were thinking, where do I go? What's the big thing around careers? And I started there. And I learned some incredible stuff. I joined an organization that had given me a bursary at varsity, and I worked back my 3 years, and thereafter I joined another organization, the second one, and incredible growth for those years, exposure to different parts of different businesses, and really learning the art of translating what business needs into IT capability, because I was an IT business analyst. And I must say that exposed me to a lot, how you listen, how you understand, how you translate, how you articulate to various stakeholders. So that was a big learning that I think set me up for one piece of the puzzle to where I am today as well. And then, of course, ABSA came up along the journey. It was an opportunity that came at the right time. At a time in my life when I was looking for growth and complexity, and looking for a different challenge.
This is year now,
And,
2010.
At 2010.
Yes.
Yeah. You remember the World Cup.
During the World Cup,
yes, 2010. And I remember, starting, because we were based in CBD. In fact, we are based in CBD. And really getting an incredible view of a bigger part of the world. I was exposed to different parts of retail bank in the work that I was doing at the time.
As a systems analyst.
As a digital, so I joined in the digital space. And the incredible exposure I got at the time through different areas of retail bank, from transactional to deposits, ABSA fund managers, the vehicle finance business, the mortgage business, because the intent then and the focus was at the time to drive, understand digital strategy and how to develop an online sales strategy. And again, the exposure was a second piece of the puzzle, because through exposure you meet various stakeholders and you get to understand, the bank from different angles. And as you know it, 2014 came, an opportunity came for the home loan business at the time. And I never looked back. My responsibilities were expanded, over the years to land where I am now in 2025, being managing exec of quite an important part of retail bank as an anchor product for us. And I'm deeply grateful. I mean, there's lots that I learned through that journey.
How has your leadership philosophy been shaped
Yeah.
over the years?
Yeah.
Especially when you look at how you started in the business,
Yeah.
how you grew in the business as you were growing.
Yeah.
How has your philosophy been shaped?
At the heart of it, and because of how I grew up, because I do think upbringing and values certainly have a fundamental role to play. I'm a big believer in the family value system. Often at home we say, if one is successful, all of us are successful. If one is going through a tough time, we'll all take that and go through a tough time. So I guess it plays in how I look at culture within the business, because for me it's important that colleagues feel and experience a warmth in the business. Because when colleagues feel that they are a part of something that holds us at the heart, because I think you have to first connect at the heart before anything else. And I think that shapes how I think about culture and leadership. And obviously over time that adds on to that. I think the second component for me, and having gone through different roles within the bank and in other areas outside of the bank, is being open to learn. Being open to learn and being open to deconstructing mental models and reconstructing those. Something that I learned in one of the very key programs that I was blessed to be a part of within ABSA. And for me, it actually even goes back to how we encourage open conversation within the business for colleagues, whether it's the executive management team, is to have the open conversations. And that's important for leadership, because when you have a place and a smell of the place that gives colleagues a sense that they can feel at home to engage, then you've reached, I'm still, on the journey.
Yeah.
But then you've reached a part of leadership that is important for businesses to grow. Because if colleagues don't speak up, or if an environment is not psychologically safe, you can't then deal the fundamental issues that are either grit to delivery or grit to culture or anything else that's pertinent to business success.
So that's important, because when you look at the South African home ownership landscape, it's quite a tough landscape currently. And when you look at that mixed with what you've just said about building the right team behind the business, what do you think is blocking people from becoming first-time home buyers? Because I've seen there's a change between back in the day in terms of the average age of people buying property. Now it's slightly higher, 35 and above, whereas before it was in the 20s. What is it that is making people delay buying property? Or if there's any blockages, what is it that's causing those years?
I think it's a myriad of challenges and issues. And I speak specifically for the South African context. We do get segments of the South African economy that are either not participating in the economy. I think you and I know the stats around youth unemployment as an example. I think the second component is going to be consumer distress. And you'll typically hear, that narrative when we talk about the state of the consumer, the indebtedness, etc. It's also in some cases, in fact, in a lot of the cases, in some segments of the market where consumers' credit profiles are impaired. And that obviously prevents many from entering into transactions that will create wealth, right? But, it's also about the availability of stock. I mean, sometimes we talk about the demand that is there in certain segments, but there's no stock that is available to meet the demands of those particular segments.
Like, is that affordable housing?
Affordable housing is absolutely a big one. And here we talk about stock that is well priced within distance that's not too far for work and family life, because I think it's key that we think about the consumer and how far they have to travel to work to obviously earn a living. All of those things come into play. So hence I say it's a myriad of issues. But I do think the industry has come from far to be where it is today, because we certainly see more and more consumers from different segments that are entering the market. I mean, we see more women, for example, entering the market than ever
And
before.
what is the index saying, the sentiment index? What are the findings?
So maybe let me also just explain to our audience what is a sentiment index. So the ABSA Homeowner Sentiment Index is an index that is from ABSA, and it gives us a sense of the sentiment in the industry. And we look at
What does
first-time
that
buyers.
mean exactly, the sentiment?
So how consumers are feeling about the industry, because remember, sentiment drives decision, and
Yes.
decisions result in actual outcomes, whether you make a purchasing decision or not. This industry is driven by sentiment. If consumers feel, as an example, that the economy is stable, there seems to be many opportunities, of course it's going to influence purchasing decisions, and the positivity around the industry will be higher. We've certainly seen that in more recent times with a sentiment index that's improved, and largely because we've seen rates start to come down. We went past the elections, and consumers were starting to feel that there's opportunity. So those are some of the things that influence purchasing decisions for many consumers. But there's many more. I know we'll go into details.
Yeah. So looking at that, what then is the role that tech and innovation is playing in reshaping the property industry?
Oh, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. When I compare to the first time when I bought property in my early 20s,
Yes.
many, many years ago, to now, I just think there's so many more accessible tools that were not there back then.
Yeah.
Just to give
Like
a-
AdProp.
Like AdProp, and then we add on from ABSA. I mean, we've got easy access to online. On the website, we've got various tools like the pre-qualification tool.
Yes.
That easily in under 10 minutes tells you whether you're good to go for a home loan from
Is that a
ABSA Bank.
qualification
A
thing?
pre-qualification tool.
Pre-qualification,
And maybe
yeah.
let me explain as one of the examples of how technology and digital come together. So we integrate internally to our systems and the data we pull from the bureau that allows us to run a couple of models in the background. You tell us how much you earn very quickly. You tell us your expenses, and that gives us an indication of whether you're actually good to go for credit, which is obviously a home loan. And we're able to tell you how much you could get, possibly, how much you could get, and you use that. It actually gives you a certificate. And we say, go shopping for a home.
Is that what they give to agents to say, I've got a
To
pre-qualification?
the consumer, yes.
Yes.
To say, I've got a pre-qualification now. The certificate is valid for 90 days. It gives me an indication of how much. In fact, we even go to the extent of telling you your credit rating as a score out of 10.
Yes.
In a very simple way. We either tell you Nondumiso, you're a 9 out of 10 or you're a 4 out of 10. If you're 4 out of 10, these are the things that you need to think about before you consider purchasing a home. So that talks to digital in under 10 minutes. In my time, when I bought my first property, that
How
wasn't
many weeks
there.
did that take?
I didn't even go through pre-qualification. I went through I went through the branch and I filled out a form, many pages, and I submitted and got a response after a couple of days. So it shows you that a lot has shifted. I mean, today there's even calculators online, calculators, and you if you're with the bank on our Absa banking app, we've got a credit coach. Again, that gives you enough information around your credit status, what you need to do. I mean, we've even got an online learning tool. So you go through the learning journey yourself as a first-time buyer without having to wait and almost educate yourself in a very short space of time around home loans and the things to consider. In fact, the topics we tackle are the topics that many first-time buyers would struggle with, and we try and make it very simple for them.
So how do you balance the commercial targets with true financial inclusion?
So both are very important. I'm a firm believer of driving both.
Inclusion and targets.
And commercial outcomes. In fact, we're very clear as Absa Bank on the importance of financial inclusion. And hence we do a lot of work around financial products that are key in driving financial inclusion, whether it's in the everyday banking space or in mortgages. And those are some of the examples that I'm giving. So for me, it's absolutely key, because when you drive financial inclusion, you unlock further opportunity and growth, and being impactful in the communities in which we operate as a bank. So absolutely, there's a very good relationship between the two.
Right. Right, guys, if you've watched this far and you haven't taken out a pen and paper, maybe now might be a good time to do so. And just a quick reminder, this conversation is brought to you by adprop.co.za. Head out to adprop.co.za if you've got a property to list for sale or a property to list for rental, so that you can find tenants. You'll be able to also manage your property investment portfolio using the platform. And if you are a service provider in the property space, you're a plumber, electrician, a builder, head out onto the platform, register as a service provider so that you can have access to a great number of property owners that are on the platform. Now, we talked about inclusion just now. How do you see women changing their financial services space? Is there a great number of women playing in this space? And if so, what is the opportunity there for them?
Look, if I speak specifically from an Absa point of view, we have a focus, and I want to go back to a focus on women and youth. That is absolutely
I almost
key
forgot the youth.
for
I'm
us.
over 35 now,
Women for
so
youth.
I no longer
And
consider myself youth.
Is it? No, you're still very young. Don't worry, you're still very young. So we've got a particular focus on women and youth as a bank. And how we deliver that, it's really around how we think about supporting entrepreneurship, but also around, some of the products and services that we need to deliver for women and youth. So it's got a fundamental role to play for us as a bank, and making sure that we play our role in society. So that's the one angle. The other angle I would use, particularly in home loans, is us understanding different segments and the consumers that are emerging, right? We spoke about, I think, briefly about women that are getting more into property.
Yes.
In
We
the
talked about
context- the homeowner
sentiment, yes.
index. And certainly that index aligns with our own internal data that we are seeing more women and having more women play an economic role. And I talk here beyond just financial services, an opportunity to partake in the economy. It unlocks so much more. And you think about the role that women play. Some of them, heading up households, it's got a fundamental role to play. So when we think about propositions in our world, we think about the needs of consumers, the gaps that exist, and how we solve for that. And I'm being very clear. We don't look at gender in home loans, and I'm being very clear. But
Yeah.
how we solve for needs helps us to reach many more consumers like women in specific segments of society. So, and I'll use the affordable housing market. We know many consumers don't have enough savings to put forward when they think about a home loan.
That for deposit,
A deposit,
transfer fees, bond
costs,
registration fees.
etc. And on the back of that, we've then said, let us design and build in features that close those gaps. So you might often hear, in fact, if you go onto our website, absa.co.za, you will see that we've got above 100% lending. And that part that is above 100% lending is really then to cover some of those costs. I mean, you and I.
So meaning
Yeah.
if you are looking for a property of 600,000, the bank sometimes can give you 660. That makes it 110% financing.
As an example.
As an example, yes.
And that additional component is to cover those transactional costs. Because you and I know and appreciate that a home loan is probably one of the biggest financial decisions that many South Africans will ever make.
It's a big decision.
It's a big decision.
Yeah.
And there are costs associated, because often people make the mistake, and maybe let's talk about some of those mistakes. A lot of consumers think, it's just the monthly home loan installment. But
Yes.
there's more. You have to think about the attorney costs. There's also, if you're buying into sectional title, there's levies. And then you also have to think about rates and taxes. If it's a freehold property, you have to think about insurance. You have to think about moving costs, right? From where you are to the new property. There's a lot that you have to consider. And those are the things that we obsess around and reflect on to say, how do we make it possible? Where do we make it possible? And how do we help consumers then enter the property ladder?
How do you think mentorship can solve that? You usually talk about mentorship, right? What does a good mentorship look like? And are there enough mentors providing that sort of insight to the market, whether it's education or whether it's peer-to-peer mentorship or one-on-one mentorship, or you taking up a couple of people under your wing?
I do believe in mentorship. I've learned from many people myself through my journey, and I continue to learn from many others. I do think you can never have enough, right? Particularly as we talk about home ownership, and I love the conversation we're having, and I love the work that you do, because you do exactly that as an example.
Thank you.
Sharing your story, sharing your journey, how you made it. That's part of creating the opportunity for someone else to learn from you. In fact, using digital the way we're doing today to reach many more South Africans that would otherwise not have the opportunity to engage with experts that have the insights into specific spaces. So I do believe in it. I think we need to do more of it. You can never do enough. And even further, we need to get to the younger generation as well, so that they learn whilst they're young.
What are the initiatives that you are most proud of that help people access property?
There's a lot. When I think about the bank and I think about the business, there's many of them. I can't list them all. But I guess my biggest appreciation in the business is how we think about placing customer at the center of everything we do. Because if you don't design around the customer or obsess around the customer, then you're never going to bring out something that has meaningful change for the consumer, right? And also when I think about your story matters.
Your story matters.
Your story matters.
Right.
It's key to how we think about infusing even empathy and creating customer experiences that are frictionless, but really solve for all of those needs. So for me, it's really about how we as a bank, how we as a business continuously think about how we solve for the customer, and not only from a home loans angle. I was chatting to one of our stakeholders, and I was talking about rewards as an example. That, I mean, even for me, I look forward to my rewards cashback every month, and what it means for me, and some people might not believe. You can actually, and I'm using myself as an example because I guess there's
There's a
many
guy who said
examples
he got over 100,000 in rewards over
over
his
certain
banking
periods.
period. And I
Oh,
said,
wow.
what?
It's
It's
real
10 years or
cashback.
something.
It's real cashback. I look forward to it every month, and just purely because the bank says if you've got more with the bank, we're going to reward you, of course, as an ABSA customer, and it's enough to even pay off other things, right? So it's those things that speak to how you solve around customer and really obsess around products and services that meet the needs of customers. I think that for me is the biggest achievement, and one that we continuously work towards, because consumer behavior changes. We have to always think ahead. We have to get feedback from consumers and do even better every day.
Is property one of the wealth creation tools that people can use to build wealth for themselves?
Absolutely.
And if so, why and how?
Absolutely. And I'll use a very simple example just to give you some proof points. So a couple of years ago, in fact, we were the first bank that launched the buy-to-let proposition in the market that allowed for the use of future rental income, and I'll explain what that means. Think about yourself, witness, getting into a development and you want to make a decision. I really want to buy this apartment, but I'm not sure if I'll get rental income, etc., and what that means. And at the time, we then said, hang on, we've got strategic partnerships. We're going to leverage data. And through data, the consumer, like yourself, you don't have to worry about figuring out what the future rental income will be. And actually what we do, we take that and we consider that as part of the affordability assessment.
So let's say, in layman's terms, I earn 10,000, right? And the property that I'm buying has potential to earn, let's say, 8,000 from the rentals. So you take 10,000 plus 8,000 and make it my possible affordability.
Yeah. Remember, part of affordability includes us looking at your expenses and everything else.
Yes. I'm just making a layman's conversation.
But a layman's, absolutely. So we take a certain percentage of that 8,000 and we say, let's take
80%?
that. 80%, up to 80%. So we take that and we add it into the affordability assessment. So what that then does, suddenly you may then find, oh, actually now I can afford to buy this property.
So at 10,000, I didn't afford it. Now with the
With a small
future
component
rental,
that's added in, actually it's opened up affordability purely because the bank has leveraged data and it's thought about the friction point for investors. And this is obviously specific to property investors and how investors aspire to grow their property portfolio. And of course, I mean, there's always guidance given to our propositions to make sure that it's fit for the right segment and that you meet those requirements. But it's one of the ways in which we solve for wealth creation. The last one that I want to use, because there's many examples, is how you then can use property to access cash. So let's say your property has grown in value. Let's say the value was, market value was 1 million, now it's grown up to 1.2 million. You can actually then ask the bank, I actually want to apply for the additional 200,000 because the value of my property has increased. Now I want to access that component, the difference by which it has grown by. And often you'll hear people throwing terms, it's equity, etc. But actually,
refinancing.
it's actually all it is.
Yeah.
It's that component.
I'm one of the people who throw out the word
I know
equity.
I know you
Are you
throw
picking
those
on me?
terms. That's why, Mina, I'm not going to use those terms. I'm going to try and be simple. And then we take you through the credit assessment process because you are applying for a higher bond. And then you access that cash, right? Once you're approved and once a higher bond is registered, you access cash.
What's the best use of that money once one accesses it from a wealth creation point of view?
And I'm glad you say from a wealth creation point of view, because I couldn't dictate what you do with that
Oh,
money.
somebody can go on holiday.
We don't dictate.
I mean, someone can go on holiday and go enjoy the money.
No, we don't dictate. We don't ask. But I guess when you think about wealth creation, my view would always start with the premise that you need to understand your own individual circumstances. It might be for you that wealth creation is going for the next property, But for me, it might be that maybe I need to use it to bring my debt down.
Or to start a business.
Or for somebody else, it might be to start a business. But it must always start with understanding your own financial circumstances and your aspirations and dreams and goals that you have. And certainly, as a bank, we know how consumers strive and aspire, and hence we say your story matters. We're willing to listen and bring the full value bank to figure out how we solve for your aspirations and goals.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that explanation was Wealth Creation 101. I did say to you that you need to take out a pen and paper, because now we're speaking to an expert in the financial services industry. And also, she's the managing executive of Absa Home Loans. Remember, this conversation is brought to you by adprop.co.za. Head out to adprop if you're looking for a property to buy or rent, or you are looking for tenants that are going to either rent your property or somebody that's looking to buy a property. You can use the same platform to manage your property investment portfolio. And if you are a service provider in the property investment space, plumber, electrician, builder, whatever it is, register on the platform so that you can have access to the great number of property owners we have on the platform. Is the property market bouncing back, or are we in a reset? A lot of people always say that I don't want to invest in property because I don't believe that property would help me build wealth. I just want to do business. And some people will say, I'd rather buy a car. And another question that I want to add on there as you answer this one is those who say, I applied for a home loan, I was declined, but a week later I went to apply for a car. I was given the car. So I was approved for a car, but I was declined for a home loan.
So let me start with the first question, and I'll answer broadly from what we see in the market around whether we're seeing that growth. So we are seeing certainly improvement in demand with interest rates that have come down. When we go back and we look at data and we engage our industry partners, we still do see that the demand hasn't yet necessarily recovered to the levels we saw in 2021. Remember, 2021, the rates
were down. The interest rates were down.
And many consumers were entering the property
market. It was
market.
A buying frenzy.
It was a good time for those that could afford to get into the property.
Was that a buyer's market?
So there were many buyers. Remember, when there are many buyers, it's a seller's market.
Okay.
Because then sellers have room to play because the demand obviously exceeds supply.
Sure.
So it was an interesting time. So we haven't yet quite recovered to those levels. In fact, even when you go back many years, there were some years where the demand was absolutely high. So we haven't yet recovered, but we are seeing recovery. But I also want to tie it back to the sentiment index that we spoke to, that consumers are largely seeing a positive outlook around the industry. And certainly we see it even more with investors, because investors are au fait with real estate and how real estate works when they take a forward-looking view on the market. So there's that component. But also I think let's not discount the fact that there are still consumers that are experiencing pressure, and there will always be in a market. So that continues to be an area that we all need to watch and figure out how we solution for consumers. But coming back, and I like the question you asked.
Well, those who say, I've applied for a home loan, I was declined, but a week later I went and applied for car finance and I got it.
And I got it, yeah. So
the bank doesn't want us to get home loans.
Which is absolutely...
That's what people say.
Not true. I know. But let me...
And I wouldn't understand why you guys would be in the business of home loans and not want people to get home loans. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all. But let me perhaps simplify it. When you think about applying for a home loan, first of all, what's key for the bank or a lender is to look at affordability. We wouldn't want to place a consumer in a position where they're not able to afford. I mean, we fully align with the National Credit Act and what it strives to achieve. So that's point number one. point number 2, it's around the elements we spoke about: your credit rating, your profile, your financial behavior, your income, your expenses, whether you have a surplus at the end of the day or a shortfall after removing your expenses. We also look at the property that will become security for the bank, right? Because that is home loans. And whether there's sufficient security for the bank. And we look at how much you are putting down, because some customers have saved up and they're willing to put down more. And that does make it easier, because what you actually do, you bring down the cost of credit, and you can actually even negotiate for a better rate, because you've certainly put down a deposit. So there's a lot of things, but also I must add in, a home loan is typically up to 30 years, right? So think about it. You're a lender and you want to lend out for a very long period. And so much can happen within that. And then you compare with vehicle finance. Those are fundamentally different products with their own specific requirements, and rightly so.
So if a guy argues and said, "But with my vehicle, I'm paying 15,000 on the home loan, I was going to pay 6. So why can't I
your
be
example,
approved?"
your example might get us into trouble. Because
But it's exactly what they say.
No, but as a banker,
Yes.
I would love to look at those details, and I do encourage consumers that
To engage, right?
to engage, because when you engage and you sit with the bank and you say, "This is my income, these are my expenses, this is the property I'm looking to buy. Let's go through the process." Maybe there's a pre-qualification tool, because often there's a lot that is misinterpreted. Certainly, as a bank, and hence I go back to the example that I gave. As a bank, we want to solve for you as a full value bank. And we want to make sure that we solve for those needs. But I just want us to safeguard. It's important that you sit down with the bank, because they're different products. And somebody else might say, "Oh, but I applied for a credit card and I didn't get," but they're different products, but you must certainly sit with the bank, because then the bank will look at your full profile and give the guidance that is needed.
So you're saying if a guy is declined, he shouldn't just take it as it was declined. He must sit and ask,
Engage.
"Why was it
Engage.
declined?
Absolutely.
What can I fix?"
Engage. What can I fix? Or what tools can I use? Where were the concerns? And maybe then we show you, it's affordability. We're looking at affordability. It's whatever the case may be. But I would certainly encourage a conversation, because I don't think that there's any lender that would say, I wouldn't want to help you achieve your dreams. Of course, we want to do it in the right way, in a responsible way, in a way that doesn't place the consumer in a worse off position. Wealth creation is very key. Whether you're a first-time buyer or an investor, or you have an existing home, you want to leverage cash from the value that has gone up for your value of your property, or for any other reason, we definitely want to make sure that we hear your story,
Sure.
because your story matters.
Guys, we continue the conversation with Ms. Nondumiso Ncapai.
I love the way you say
Ncapai. I've just been corrected.
Yes.
So I took the correction. And I want to remind you that this conversation is brought to you by adprop.co.za. Head out to adprop.co.za if you're looking for a property to buy or rent, or if you're looking to rent out or sell your property. If you're managing a property investment portfolio, the platform will help you do that. And if you're a service provider in the property space, a plumber, an electrician, or a builder, anybody that's providing services to property owners, list on the platform so that you can have access to the great number of property owners that we have on the platform. There's something that I thought about as you were answering the question around a car versus a home loan, car finance versus home loan. Doesn't the longevity of the loan and whether or not a car appreciates or depreciates, or a property appreciates or depreciates, play a role?
I mean, they do play a role, but I also want to be. It's also, I think we have to talk about it. Absolutely, property appreciates, and I think we didn't touch on the importance of where you buy when you think about buying.
Or
as well.
location.
Remember location.
Yes.
Let's back to the 101. Or the state of your property for the segment for which you might want to market it for, whether it's for rental. There's a lot. There's a lot in there. So I'm often very careful when I talk about appreciation. Absolutely appreciation, but there's a lot of things that determine
The area
rate
might
of-
be deteriorating.
the rate of appreciation, etc. Like location. It could be the type of property, the demand. All of those things also come into play, right? But absolutely, in general, absolutely, property appreciates as an asset, and hence we've got huge interest from many that want to leverage property as an asset class for wealth creation.
Have you had instances where somebody bought and an area deteriorated?
Absolutely, it does happen. It does happen where you buy and the area shifts over time, over a very long period. And that's why it's important that when you do think about buying, you do your research. You understand the market, where that market is going, the area. Where is that area? Is
Yes.
it close to public transport, easy access, etc.? All of those things. The research at the very beginning is absolutely important. But also, for some investors or property buyers, they'll say, I'm only in it for a short period. So,
It's an in and out thing.
The in and out.
Yeah.
Some do, I know you probably
Flipping.
do it, flipping.
Yeah.
And some are there for the long term because, they're looking either for capital appreciation or they're looking for rental income. So it's various things that influence where you buy, why you buy, etc. versus perhaps a vehicle. But again, as I say, it's always good to go back to the basics and understand why you're making that decision. Because every decision you make must be for your own circumstances as a consumer.
So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs entering real estate or finance industry?
I do think there's perhaps a view out there that it's difficult to get into property because banks ask for a lot in comparison to consumers that earn an income that you can see in bank statements every single month. I do think it's important again to engage because of course there will be specific requirements as an entrepreneur. Certainly. We do see even that growth from entrepreneurs that are wanting to leverage property or get into property, and some actually leveraging their property portfolios for accessing further funds. So absolutely, you have to engage the bank because there are very, very specific requirements from a credit point of view that differ from, and I'm using this example because it's often used, from those that earn a predictable monthly income, and you can evidence that through bank statements and pay slips. Yeah.
So is that for the entrepreneurs, record keeping then becomes the most important thing?
Having the right records, making sure your financials are up to date. I actually do say, whether you're an entrepreneur or an individual customer, when you bank with the same bank that you want to apply for home loan for, it's obviously easier. Why? Because the bank can see your money coming in and they understand your financial behavior, etc., and they're able to obviously put forward an offer that's based on the behavior that they see. So I would definitely encourage that you think about opening a bank account with the bank, because that allows the bank to understand more and engage. As I say, the requirements are slightly different. Make sure your requirements are up to date, your financial statements, all of those, and that you have the right bank account as an entrepreneur or a business owner.
What should consumers understand better about bonds and mortgages?
Yeah. So it's the same thing. I know we use the words interchangeably.
Yeah. Usually they say it's a bond, and some say it's a bondage.
It's a bondage. They say it's a bondage because you have it for many
For 20,
years.
they always complain about that part.
20,
I'd
30
rather buy cash.
years.
I'd rather save money for 30 years. I wonder if they actually do though.
I think it's going back to the 101.
Like for instance, access. So I was
Yeah.
talking to someone yesterday about an access facility.
Yeah.
To say you might have a home loan and you want to pay it off. You can keep it open so that you can continue accessing the money that you've put in?
It's a very good angle that you bring in, and I'm glad you brought it in. So, because there's many concepts in a bond or home loans or mortgages. The one concept you brought in now is access bond. We call it flexi reserve at Absa Bank, where you have a feature that allows you to pay much more than your contractual monthly installment. So let's say your contractual monthly installment is 8,000, but then you decide, I actually want to put in 9,000 rands every month. That additional goes into a pocket called a flexi reserve, where you can then access it at any point in time. What is often misunderstood, and I want to bring it as part of education, when you sign your home loan agreement, when you apply for a home loan, there is a clause that says the bank may determine the maximum amount that you may withdraw from that facility, and purely because what we don't want is that you withdraw too much, and then suddenly your installment then is above your affordability. So we want to make sure that we protect the consumer, and that you withdraw the right amounts, and that it doesn't exceed the amount that would have been within the affordability assessment. So absolutely, it's a great feature, and it allows you to also reduce the interest costs over time.
Yes.
So that's one. I think the other one is, you get consumers that pay a certain amount, and then they say, I had a bond for $1 million. I've paid down 400,000. I'm now only owing 600,000. I actually want to go back up to $1 million. I want to use the difference to do many other things, whether it's property investment or anything else around wealth creation. And it's called a readvance.
A re-advance. So they give you back the money you've paid. Now, it's not an equity release.
Okay, not give back. Let's just say it's borrowing you money again up to the original loan
repayments.
amount. Yeah.
Oh.
But you have to go through a credit assessment because, as always, we want to make sure that you can afford.
Explain that again.
So let's say your home loan was $1 million. You've paid it down to now 600,000, and then you decide, I've paid a lot. I actually want to access the difference, 400,000. You're not registering a higher bond. You just want to borrow up again back to 1 million. So that's the difference. And then when you apply, we call it the readvance, and we go through a normal credit process. A normal credit process, we look at your income and expenses. Can you afford? And if you can, you are able to go back up to the original loan amount.
Is there a possibility to combine that with the equity release? Maybe the property has gone up in value by 300,000.
You can.
And then I've paid
Anyways,
the 400.
Look, the equity release in any event would take into account some of those aspects. So for example, your property value has gone up to beyond the original loan amount. Certainly, those things come into place. Remember, we look at where you are with your outstanding balance and the term, income and expenses. All of those things get considered when you are looking to access some cash out of your property.
Yeah, so maybe an evaluation still has to be done, even if you're
Evaluation
doing a
still has
re-advance?
So we do evaluation. We have to do evaluation, and I know some consumers might say, "But no one came to value my property." We have ways and means in which we
Desktop
value.
valuation.
You get desktop valuations, automated valuations, and physical valuations, and a bank has different rules around how we arrive at that. But certainly, it comes into play as part of the application process. Again, it's for the bank to make sure that they've got sufficient security for the lending that it needs to execute for the consumer.
Wow. How have you managed to stay so grounded while leading at such a high level?
Look, it's a very good question. It goes back to, because when you think about you being as a human being, there's parts of ourselves, and you often hear people talk about focus on your physical, focus on your emotional, continue to grow, which is the IQ. But there's that other fourth one, which I call spiritual quotient, which I was quite fortunate in my personal journey. I spent time, really reflecting, understanding my values, and it's possibly one of the groundings for me when I talk about deep roots and where I fit into the world and my purpose as a human being. And when life happens, challenges happen, I still stand because of that spiritual part that grounds me, and that helps me to look at a bigger picture always, and understand where I'm going. In fact, when I look at my career, it started off specializing in a particular area and slowly transitioned to a purpose-driven career journey in the work that I do. So that grounds me. That spiritual part grounds me in a very big way. But also the other part is I was very fortunate to have been part of a program that gave me the opportunity to focus on who I am. I actually remember we were asked to answer the question, who am I? And I actually had to spend a lot of time deeply reflecting on my journey, my beliefs, the things that shaped me, whether they were good or bad. And that helped me to understand more about myself, but also it gave me the ability to strengthen my roots.
What's your vision for the future of property in South Africa?
It's a very easy one because we've got a beautiful purpose in the business.
Yeah.
To house the nation and shape the industry in a meaningful way. We definitely want to see many, many more consumers have access to this market because it just enables many to partake in the economy. We know there's areas of the market or segments that are underserved, and we continue to research and reflect around those areas. So my dream is certainly to see us as a bank house the nation, because when we partake in shaping those dreams, we unlock more for many in the economy and shaping the industry in a meaningful way. I mean, we say that as a purpose because we know we've got a fundamental role to play in rethinking and reshaping, in checking and challenging, but also in being part of the bigger picture and solving for home ownership as a big brand on the African continent, and as a brand in the South African market in which we as a business, as Absa Home Loan, operate.
What do the words, it's more than just money, mean to you?
It's deep. It's beyond just the rands and cents that you count. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. It's more than just about money. There's more that's deeper. For me, it certainly goes back to the heart. When I think about your book, it's more than just money.
Yes. When you look into that camera now, as you're about to close, and you think about the young Nondumiso that has overcome struggles to get to where they are, that has had to grow emotionally, mentally, spiritually. If you were to speak to her now, to encourage her, perhaps she's white, black, Indian, sitting in the township, sitting in a posh house in Sandhurst, wherever she is, because I believe everybody faces challenges one way or another. What would you say to her?
That's a very deep question. Witness, it's a very, very deep question, but an important one. There's a question that one of the lecturers that I came across in my journey once asked in the classroom. And the question was, what would you do if you were not afraid? And that question was posed much later on in life. And I think if I had that question enter the room to my younger self, I think I would have been more courageous enough much earlier in my life. So it's certainly a deep question, and one that I would love to land with the audience. What would you do if you're not afraid? Because a lot of the decisions that we make or not make is because of what sits in our minds or the battlefield in our minds. And I love it when there's a book that I love, Michelle Obama, Becoming. In her book, she talks about the fact that failure actually happens first in the mind before the actual failure event. So a lot of our decisions in life have to do with what we think about, and the things that hold us back. And it's often not somebody else that's sitting next to you, or you think they're holding you back. It's what sits in their mind. So it's things I learned later in life that if I was my younger self, I would deeply reflect on if those questions were posed at that point in time. And you never stop learning. The witness, look, I haven't arrived. I haven't arrived. I think when the timer is off, it goes off and it says, Nons, your time is up, then I'll say I've arrived. Because you never stop learning. You never stop growing. You never stop transitioning and evolving through the journey of life.
What is the one book that you can recommend for your audience? Is that Michelle Obama?
I read many books. And different books. I love this book right here.
It's more than
It's
just
more
money.
than just money. And why I love it, Witness, because you are a fantastic storyteller. You simplify things that are often complicated to make it so easy for the you and I that are sitting at home, wherever you are, globally, because it's got global access now, to really make things simple. It's more than just money. And the life experience that you've had, because you talk from a point of reality that's rooted and meaningful. And I just say, there it is. And
Sure.
to see where you are now, as successful as you are, and the kind of work that you do, I think it's incredible. It's incredible work. I wish we could have many, many more youngsters like yourself that stand up and take the courage to do what is often not done.
Wow. Thank you. I appreciate you. And more than anything, I'm happy that you took time to sit with us, have this conversation, and to add value to our audience. And when we started, you said something quite powerful. You said, these recordings need to happen because not many young people can have that access. You know, you and I can sit at a restaurant and talk about what I'm asking you now. But the purpose of having it recorded is so that 10 generations from today, somebody could stumble on this video and something that you said can change their life. And those that are watching now currently, they can start making decisions around their money, around property investing, around business, because they are hearing it from an expert. Sometimes maybe when we are talking, I'm like, witness, was it?
And you know a lot. Yeah.
So, but thank you so much. Do you have any closing words that you'd love to give to the audience?
No, I first of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to share with many out there. It's the stories that we love. The stories that we love listening to. I've shared obviously my story, and I know as you continue to have many more engagements with experts, that the audience will get many stories and different perspectives, and to continue listening in. We only grow from learning from different perspectives and lenses.
Thank you so much. Right, guys, that was the conversation with Ms. Nondumiso Ncapai. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, this conversation is brought to you by adprop.co.za. If you haven't written down anything, please replay this conversation, take out a pen and paper, and capture as much as you can. And from myself and my team, broadcasting from the ABSA offices in Johannesburg, South Africa, it's more than just money. We'll see you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.